best record in all of baseball at the All Star Break. Words I never thought I would be saying. So we're going to talk about what went right in the first half all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Welcome in. Welcome all. We are halfway through the week here. The Tigers obviously not playing thanks to the All Star Break. Well, 6 players are playing and played on Tuesday night. I'm recording this before the All Star game. So if there's anything, we'll kind of recap that a little bit more tomorrow, but I'm not staying up until 11 or midnight to talk about the All-Star game, because we are going to talk about what has gone right for the Detroit Tigers in the first half, quote unquote, of the season. Obviously, the All-Star game is not exactly the halfway point of the year, but it's usually, just like the marker for first half, second half stats and everything. But I do this every year, and obviously we do it a lot in the off season as well. What went right for the Tigers this year, what went wrong. But I think that doing it at the break is very important for perspective's sake, and to just kind of identify what the strengths and then obviously later in the week weaknesses are for this team as we approach the trade deadline and whatnot. It's important to kind of roadmap and talk about what they need, what they don't need, etc. So today is going to be the positives. Today is going to be what went right. And then later in the week, probably tomorrow, assuming no other news comes out, we'll do what has gone wrong, which is obviously not very much. The Tigers, again, have the best record in baseball, but there's plenty of things that they can still improve on. And there's plenty of things, obviously, that have gone very right. Now, every year that I do an episode of what went right and what went wrong, there's always people that either don't listen to what I just said or just read the title and then get mad and comment and are like, oh, like, you're being too positive. Or on the negative one, they're like, oh, you're being too negative, or how could you think that anything's gone wrong? They have the best record in baseball, etc. We're doing both, okay? We're doing both. This episode is just one, and then later in the week, we'll do the other. So All-Star Break check-in. What has gone right for the 59-win Detroit Tigers? We're going to start with the offense. This is an offense that is 6th best in baseball in team OPS, on base plus slugging, and are 6th in baseball in just runs scored, right? Not a crazy metric, not some really advanced statistic, just straight up. Everybody's played the same amount of games. The Tigers are 6th in baseball in runs scored by the offense. Wow. Absolute wow. And absolute wow. That's not something anyone's ever said. Obviously, you have people like Riley Greene, who you expected to produce, right? And kind of had the expectations going into the year of, this guy needs to be a focal point of this offense. You have guys like Gleyber Torres, who I'm not sure anyone expected him to push like a 400 on base percentage, but like, you signed him to be a producer, and he has been an all-star caliber player before. It's not like the most surprising thing in the world that he is producing. I think there's an argument, I'm not sure it's a winning one, but there is an argument that the rest of the entire lineup is, to varying degrees, kind of, I don't want to say surprising, but the production from nearly every other spot in the lineup has been a pleasant development. We'll call it that. And the reason that this lineup is 6th in OPS and runs scored is because all 9 spots in the lineup are producing. This team has 9 players, literally 9 players, with an OPS plus of 100 or higher. All OPS plus is it puts your OPS on a scale. So if you have an 100 OPS plus, you are a league average hitter. Everything above that means you are that percent above a league average hitter, and obviously vice versa for anything below. 9 players. 8 guys that are everyday regulars. The only person that isn't is Trey Sweeney, who's obviously far below league average. But since, the Parker Meadows, Matt Bierling, Wenzel Perez have all come back from injury, Trey Sweeney obviously has gotten significantly less playing time and at one point was sent down to AAA. And if you want to include Jahmai Jones, which is like super probably not fair just because he has, double-digit amount of plate appearances, but he's hitting very, very well. So that would make 10. And obviously Wenzel Perez is included in that 9 as well. And I'm not sure he is qualified as a hitter yet for the amount of plate appearances he has. But the point remains, with the current lineup construction, the Tigers, if they wanted, could put out 9 players with an OPS plus over 100 all at the same time. There are not too many teams in baseball that can do that. Right? You look at the Yankees. They obviously have like the really top-heavy guys. Aaron Judge is having one of the best offensive seasons in the history of baseball, right? Like you have Jazz Chisholm Jr., who's having a really solid year. Like you have like the big names, but then you also have guys at the bottom of the lineup that are well below. And that's how most lineups are constructed. You have your guys at the top that produce, and then you have your guys at the bottom that you're hoping to get more production from. The Tigers are no different, but even the guys at the bottom of their lineup have been league average or better hitters. And that makes for a really difficult lineup to navigate through as an opposing coaching staff and as an opposing pitcher. Some of the individuals that I think deserve a ton of credit for the first half, and this is more based on expectations going into the year. Like, again, I'm not going to talk too much about Riley Greene because we talked about how Riley Greene should be an all-star caliber player going into the season, and he has done that. But guys like Dylan Dingler, okay, he has at the All-Star break exactly a 100 OPS plus. He has been almost averaged out to exactly a league average hitter. Now, there's a lot more nuance to it than that, right? Like he got up to a really good start and then has kind of slowly fell back down to earth a little bit. But regardless, like I don't really care. That you could kind of say that about like the nebs and flows are just kind of how baseball works. I think that the consistent like, I go 1 for 4 every single day and hit 250 like doesn't really exist in baseball. Like you're always going to have some days you go 3 for 4, some days you go 0 for 4, whatever. Now Riley Greene, you can be a little bit more dramatic with it and whatnot, but Dingler's production from catcher has been an unbelievable boost to this team. And part of that is because he's also really good defensively. We talked going into the year about like, okay, maybe Jake Rogers will be the really good defensive catcher. And then Dingler, if he, figures it out at the plate, can maybe be the guy that is going to get more of a look offensively and be the guy that, if you need offensive production or if a lefty is on the mound or whatever, that you put him out there, and he has just completely taken over as the starting catcher. And Rogers has been delegated to a backup role because Dingler is not only a significantly better hitter than Jake Rogers, but he is also playing incredible defense. All of his metrics are really good behind the plate. He's been really good limiting base runners. And that's something he kind of made an adjustment on. Earlier in the year, he kind of struggled. So his season, advanced caught stealing, metrics may not look like they're elite of the elite. But in the last month and a half, he's been way better than he was in the first month and a half. And so getting both of those things behind the plate it's almost like, we'll keep going and talk, Zach McKinstry and all these other guys that have produced. If we got one of these things to happen or two of these things to happen, two of these players to go above their expectations, we'd be talking about how it was a successful first half. And the Tigers really feel like at the break, there's like 4 or 5 of these where it's like, wow, everything that the Tigers needed to have happen offensively in some capacity, again, varying levels of I don't know, success or varying, ceilings in that has happened. And Dingler is such an important piece to that puzzle because they have sacrificed no defense. If anything, they've improved defensively while also improving significantly offensively from the catcher position. Now, I'm not trying to make it sound like Dingler is Cal Raleigh up there either. Like his walk rate is 3%. There's a lot that he needs to improve on in the second half and going forward. But the fact of the matter is, we are getting offensive production from catcher that going into the season, I think a large portion of the fan base just assumed we weren't going to get much offensive production from the catcher position, and we haven't sacrificed any defense to do so. So I think that he deserves a ton of credit. Let's talk Zach McKinstry, and then we'll obviously talk, Spencer Torkelson and a few of the other key contributors, fixtures on the offensive side of the ball before we get into pitching. We'll do all of that right after this. First, though, going to talk to you all about our friends over at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that is made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory, over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to a real person every time. And for trade pros that are looking for that extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. So join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, you can use promo code SH5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back tomorrow, assuming no big news comes out of the All Star game or out of, Tigers world. Then we will just talk about, the areas of improvement that still need to be had as we head into the second half and approach the All Star break on tomorrow's show. Today, though, we talk about everything that has gone right for the Tigers in the first half of the season. You cannot have this conversation without talking about Zach McKinstry. You can't. He has the second highest OPS on the team amongst qualified hitters, dude. His OPS is higher than Gleyber Torres and Spencer Torkelson. Even if he does not hit for anything in the second half, okay? Even if Zach McKinstry's OPS post All-Star break, when we're talking about this in October, November, it is like 550. It just doesn't matter to me. Like, he has already so above and beyond exceeded expectations that it's just a massive win regardless. And he has a kind of a cap on how low his value can be to a team because of everything he does outside of the batter's box. And I know we've had this conversation a million times, so we don't have to talk about it for too long. But having a lefty that can play plus defense pretty much anywhere in the field and give you what metrically grades out as elite base running is such a valuable piece to have, regardless of if he hits or not. And if he does keep hitting, then he's going to keep putting up, he's on like a 5-WAR pace. That's bona fide, solidified all-star caliber production. So he has obviously been fantastic. This is a guy that we were talking about, 12 months ago, trying to DFA. And thank goodness they didn't, because he has been one of the most valuable pieces of this entire operation here in this successful first half of the season. Spencer Torkelson, I think it is so important to remember the expectations for Torkelson going into the year. We had conversations in February where like people didn't even think he was going to make the team out of camp. They signed Gleyber Torres so that they could move Colt Keith to first base because they had zero faith that Torkelson was going to be the first baseman and going to be at the major league level this season. We talked so much this winter about the Tigers really need a right-handed hitting power bat. They got that internally without having to go out and get it just by Spencer Torkelson having the season that he has had. 21 home runs and an 826 OPS at the All Star break. That is absolutely phenomenal. Again, given the expectations for him going into the season. He also has really good walk numbers, over 11% walk rate. That's, in the upper echelon of baseball. He also isn't chasing. Those kind of go hand in hand, but not exclusively. You'll see some people that can do one without the other. Not chasing, in the top 10% in baseball in lowest chase rate. And he's doing damage in the zone. He is crushing fastballs, but his slugging percentage is high against pretty much everything. The batting average varies against, pitch to pitch. He's hitting sub 200 against certain pitches, right? But the slug is high against pretty much everything. And that's what we've wanted. We want a guy that can draw walks and do damage on any pitch in the zone. And that is simply just what he has been this season. And even though he's had stretches where, in June, the second half of June especially, like he wasn't hitting very well, got back on the horse and has been producing a ton in July. Man, I cannot say enough good things about what Torque has brought this team either. And again, it's so important to remember, literally going into spring training games, like we thought that there was a real chance he wasn't even going to be on the roster on opening day. And like he wasn't even penciled in as a starter going into the season. He's been one of this team's best hitters so far. Colt Keith kind of a little bit goes, is correlated with Torkelson because he has had zero positional stability. And you can say that about a handful of guys, Zach McKinstry, obviously, but like he has been told a million different things. He's been told he's going to play first. He's been told he's going to play second. He's been told that he's going to try third base again, which he hasn't done since, pre-injury in the minor leagues. He's been told that maybe there's the only spot for him is DH. He's been a platoon. He's been not a platoon. Like he started off terribly at the plate on top of all those things. And yet at the All Star break has still been one of this team's most productive hitters, especially since the 1st of May, has just completely turned it around. He's only 23 years old and is under contract till I think past 2030. Unbelievable development, made adjustments, and has been so good for this team over the last 2 months. Now, it's also kind of impossible to have this conversation without talking about Javi Baez. I think if we're being honest with ourselves, okay, and this isn't meant to like put a downer on things. If we're being honest with ourselves, I think the offensive numbers probably tail off in the second half. And look, if I'm wrong and they don't, then that's the greatest news in the world. Okay, I would rather be wrong and have it benefit the Tigers. But if I had to, put money on it, I would say that maybe, I'm not saying he's going to be terrible again. He's clearly made adjustments and they've worked. But I think the odds of him having, a well above league average offensive second half or post All-Star break are probably slim. But that's okay. Like he has clearly the floor of his offense has raised a little bit. And I think he has been so good defensively at shortstop and at center field for a large majority of the first half. He's hit 8th or 9th in the lineup, regardless of his offensive production. Hinch has not wavered from that. Not like, Javi's hitting well, we got to move him up in the lineup. He's been at the bottom no matter what. So even if the offense does tail off in the second half, if he's the 9 hitter and giving you good defense and hitting with runners in scoring position, like he's been doing his entire Tigers tenure, kind of regardless of what the all-encompassing stats are, what what the overall numbers are, then that's still worth it. And that's still valuable. And that's still fine by me in the second half. He has been such a pleasant surprise this year, and surprise is the word for Javi Baez's production. You have to give him his flowers and give him a standing ovation, if you will, for how he has turned around his Tigers tenure. We're going to talk about a couple more things before we get into the pitching, and then we'll kind of put a bow on this with overall team stuff. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Monarch Money. Have you ever wished managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings account or a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. There's so many great features. I tell y'all all the time, it can help you kind of manage your subscriptions. It can help you notice, spending habits and kind of point out and highlight what areas you maybe want to improve on or want to not spend as much on. And if you're sharing your finances with somebody else, Monarch helps you stay on the same page easier than anybody else. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off of your first year. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in as always. I think organizational depth has been a positive on the offensive side of the ball this year. You have guys like Justin Henry Malloy, obviously like not an above league average hitter, but that's why he's down in Toledo. For a depth piece in the organization, having a guy that can come up and have like a 330 on base percentage is valuable. That is a good thing. He's not even in the major leagues, similar to the Cater Montero conversation, right? Like he's not even in the major leagues when everybody is at full health. He's not even in the major leagues now when they're not quite at 100% full health. But he can get on base when called upon. Tomas Nido had obviously been a big plus in that department. Jahmai Jones has been fantastic this year. Even like Brewer Hicklin came up and played like a game and got on base a couple of times. Like they have just gotten production from so many different people. And I think that is one of the maybe not as talked about parts of this organization. People give this front office and give Scott Harris a hard time for his waiver claims and improving between the margins and getting these guys that, to minor league deals and whatnot. Well, these are, the fruits of that. Like, this is why he does it. Now, I still want him to be more aggressive on getting like the big names as well, but I think those are not like mutually exclusive things. You should be doing both of those things. And I think he deserves credit for improving the organizational depth. You think about some of the names, at the end of the Avila era, 2 or 3 years ago that were coming up and getting meaningful at bats when people got hurt. It's night and day different. So I think that is a plus. And then we have to shout out the base running. I know that, I know that that Cora over at third base frustrates people sometimes. And I know that is, overly aggressive can be a thing. And we've seen that at times, but this is metrically the second best base running team in the entire sport. And I think that has been a huge reason for their success as well. On the pitching side of things, the team is 9th in ERA in all of baseball. And you have guys like Skubal, best pitcher on the planet, like there are, again, like not going to talk too much about him because we expected him to be. He's coming off a Cy Young season. We expected him to be great, and he's been great. But guys like Casey Mize, a 3.15 ERA, has improved the swing and miss stuff. There's still a long way to go for the swing and miss stuff and for the whiff rate, the strikeout rate, etc. But having a 3.15 ERA, and it was sub 3 before his last outing before the break this past weekend, that has been such a great development. Reese Olson, a 2.95 ERA. When those three guys have been healthy, you're talking about best pitcher on the planet, followed by two guys that have ERAs around 3, and for most of the first half had sub 3s. That is a fantastic three-headed monster kind of have at the top of your rotation. And then in the bullpen, obviously you have Will Vest, you have Tommy Kahnle. Kahnle, obviously he's had 2 outings kind of going into the break that have struggled a little bit. Will Vest had an outing that wasn't up to par, but those 2 guys have been so good for a majority of the first half in a bullpen that has been, I don't know if I want to use the phrase inconsistent, but it's just been a constant. There hasn't been much stability outside of those 2. I think that's a better way to put it. It hasn't been stable outside of Vest and Kahnle. Herter has been inconsistent, right? Chase Lee didn't even start the year on the team, got called up, had been really good. His last couple of outings, he struggled. Like there's a lot of guys that have just kind of been part of the revolving door of, okay, let's give them a chance. Okay, well, Matt Gage, right? Like now we're going to send you down. Bailey Horn, you're going to get called up and sent down. Dylan Smith called up and sent down. Like there just hasn't been much stability there. But you know that if both are rested, you're going to get 8th and 9th inning Kahnle and Will Vest, or if one of them isn't rested, you're going to get the one that is in the 9th inning in that high leverage situation. So I think those 2 have been very important pieces to a pitching staff and to a bullpen that has needed some stability to it. The Tigers find themselves with the best record in baseball at the break. I will never get tired of saying that. And so much has gone right. I think the offense really is the biggest piece of this. Again, based on preseason expectations. The pitching has been a top 10 staff, bullpen and starters, combined in all of baseball in the first half. However, we knew that the pitching was going to be a strength of this team and that they were going to have to hang their hat on that. The hitting, being a borderline top 5 offensive in terms of production in baseball, is something I never would have guessed. And they are top 10 in both. And that's why they've been the best team in baseball. Top 10 in pitching, just outside of top 5 in hitting. Top 3 in run differential, and that's even with a brutal weekend going into the All Star break in run differential against the Mariners. There is still a lot to improve on. And we'll, again, talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about the areas of improvement and maybe what's went wrong, etc. But I think it's important to look at this in a glass half full mindset. There is a lot to improve on with this team, and they have the best record in baseball. That means there's area to grow on a team that already has more wins than anybody else. That's a good thing. That's a positive. Because that means they're not at their limit. It's not like, oh, well, this team can't get any better. No, they can keep improving and are already the quote-unquote best. That's a positive thing. And that's why I like doing these kind of check-ins at the All-Star break for, where we're at in the season based on what we thought was going to happen going into the year, because I think the perspective of where we are is important. It's important to really highlight, based on what we thought going into the year, this has been way above and beyond expectations. This has been way below expectations, etc. And this team is certainly has more things that have been above and beyond than below, as they find themselves with 59 wins going into the All-Star game on Tuesday night. Don't play baseball again until Friday. However, I think that's right. Yeah, till Friday. Sorry, my calendar's right there. On my personal calendar, I have the Tigers schedule that I write on it at the beginning of every month. So there you go. This has been a great year, and there's still a lot of areas to improve. We'll talk about maybe what has went wrong and what areas have struggled on tomorrow's show. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day, and we will, of course, be back tomorrow. After you make us your first listen, make Locked On MLB Game Night your second listen. After the final game of the MLB slate, every single night, Locked On gives you insight from every single game that is played, a nice daily recap. It is absolutely awesome. See a lot of different hosts on there. You see me on there every once in a while. Go check it out on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.